Well, welcome to another episode of Cage Free Theology. I'm Clint Archer.
And I'm Will Brannon.
What's our question today, Will?
Our question for the day is, are guardian angels biblical?
Well, whoever's here, let's get into it.
There are so many places that we could begin with guardian angels. So I guess the first place is, before we look at biblical texts and how we think through this, when the average person hears guardian angel, what do you think they're thinking of? Or what do you mean when you talk about a guardian angel?
I think somebody's talking about like a spiritual bodyguard that walks around with you. And wherever you go, they're like, whoop, careful, don't step there. There's a snake there, or something like that. Or, I've even heard stories of people say, yeah, there was this car accident and the car was on fire and I couldn't get my seatbelt undone. And then suddenly the seatbelt was undone, and that must have been my guardian angel.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
So I guess when we talk about guardian angels, the first thing is to say guardian angel implies angels have roles or functions. So what are some examples in the Bible of what angels do? And maybe it would be helpful to just start with, forget guardian angel, just what is an angel?
Yeah, and also we have a whole episode on the unseen realm. If a person's really interested, we spoke about that in some depth. But an angel is a spiritual being, a created being that God has fellowship with in heaven. There's different types and with different roles. You've got the cherubim, you've got the seraphim, the messenger angels, and then fallen angels that were cast out of heaven, which we call demons or unclean spirits, those types of things. So these are intelligent, non-human beings. You might want to check out our alien episode as well, where do aliens fit into the Bible? Because, I mean, this is an intelligent, non-human extraterrestrial, in a sense, being that is interdimensional, can come from where God is and take on a physical form. That's what an angel is.
Yeah, I think when we think about what does an angel do, the primary meaning of the word is a messenger. Mm-hmm. So you have different spiritual beings that all serve different roles. So when we talk about angels, we're talking about spiritual beings created by God for his glory that have the role usually of carrying or declaring messages. So how does that play in with the idea of guardians? Are there any biblical examples where we see angels guarding people or places? What is that? Are there biblical examples of that?
For one thing, yes, the word angelos in Greek, angel, means messenger, but there's other words attached to what they do. For example, they're called ministering spirits. Mm-hmm. So ministering means helping, serving. We see angels ministering to Christ even in the Garden of Gethsemane, not only delivering messages like Gabriel to Mary. And then you've got in Daniel chapter 10, the really fascinating example of an angel coming to Daniel saying, I know you've been praying for 3 weeks. I was held up on my way here by the prince of Persia, which we assume is a demonic angel, demon, until Michael, the archangel, which is called your prince, meaning Israel's angel, came to help me. And you're just like, what? He's talking about this like we should all know what it is. And angels are constantly in the New Testament even called authorities, principalities, rulers. So part of their structure is spheres of responsibility. Right. And so there are some that have spheres of responsibility over nations or maybe geographic locations, like the Prince of Greece in Daniel chapter 10, the Prince of Persia, Michael, your prince, meaning Israel's prince. But then you've also got from there's an implication that possibly some of the lower angels, lowest spheres of responsibility, goes low as all the way down to, one church or even one person. And that's where the concept of a guardian angel comes in, like an angel that has been assigned to minister to protect, to somehow be with one person. And this thought also comes from the book of Tobit, which is found in the Apocrypha. It's not an inspired book. It's not the Word of God, but it is a book that the people in the Second Temple days, in Jesus' day, the Jews, they would have been very familiar with. And you see reference to it even to some of the books in the Apocrypha. The book of the Watchers, for example, the book of Enoch. Jude even references that. In the book of Tobit, you've got this angel who comes in a human form and accompanies the main character and helps him and protects him and gives him advice and things like that. So this idea was in the minds of the Jews of Jesus' day.
Right. This is not a novel idea. The idea of angels that are directly interceding or not interceding in a salvific way. What I mean by that is just helping, affecting events on earth is very common in the early church and certainly in Second Temple literature.
So you've got Psalm 91, which the devil quotes.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was going to ask you is where do we see examples? You already mentioned, Michael is some sort of guardian angel, it seems, over a country in a sense. What are some other examples of, you mentioned Hebrews 1, the ministering spirits, other examples of angels directly ministering to, or what we would think of as guarding believers in Scripture?
Well, firstly, you have the promise in Psalm 91, verse 11, that which I've seen on bumper stickers. People like to have that on their car, like angels are looking after me while I drive. Maybe you should drive safer. But Psalm 91, verse 11 is the verse that Satan quotes to Jesus when he says, throw yourself off the pinnacle of the temple and he will send his spirits to catch you and to protect you so that not even your foot will hit a rock. And Jesus says, basically, yeah, that is true and that would happen, but you shouldn't be testing God in that way. Like you don't jump off a building so that the angels will catch you. But that idea that there are angels that are there to look after at least the Messiah. So that's one point. That's mentioned there. In 2 Kings chapter 6, verse 17, you have an army of angels that are sent to guard Elisha from an invading army. And remember, the servant is all freaking out, and Elisha prays to the Lord to open his eyes to see that those who are with us are more than those who are with them. And sure enough, God opens the servant's eyes, and he can see that there's a whole cadre of angels and their horses that are there to look after Elisha. That's 2 Kings 6.
You mentioned Psalm 91. Can I read Psalm 91, 11, and 12? Yeah, as far as the idea of are there guardian angels, what people usually mean by that are individual angels for a person, and we'll get to that in a minute. But just to hear what Psalm 91, 11, and 12 says, for he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up lest you strike your foot against a stone. So that says very clearly God can and does command angels to guard or help protect, to do his will in these specific ways among his people. That's an astounding thought. Yeah. And I would say not just something speculative, it's in the Bible and it's a declaration of the love of God. Like, how does God care for you? He even commands angels to protect his people. That's an amazing thought.
It is an amazing thought. You also see with Balaam's donkey as well. Remember, the donkey can see an angel. The angel's there in order to prevent Balaam from going to do something that would jeopardize the safety of the Israelites. But through the false prophecy, the lying that Balaam was going to do. So you've got that. But the verse that really, for me, really makes me scratch my head is Matthew 18 and verse 10, where Jesus says that, see that you do not despise one of these little ones, speaking of children, I guess, for I say to you that their angels in heaven continually see the face of my Father who's in heaven. I mean, that's just a really strange statement, that the reason that you shouldn't look down on or despise or hurt or harm these little ones is because their angels in heaven continually see the face of my Father who's in heaven. And so it's that possessive pronoun there, that their angels, the angels that belong to them, to these little ones. And you see a glimpse of that coming out in Acts chapter 12 as well, where Rhoda, the servant girl, comes and says, Peter's at the door. He was in jail. We were praying, and now he's at the door. And the people say, no, it can't be. It must be his angel. There's the possessive pronoun again, Peter's angel. And it's more likely in their mind that the angel is there than Peter escaped from jail. Right. So, yeah, I mean, what do you think of guardian angels?
I think is there an angel that is specifically assigned to each individual person? I don't know if it's like one throughout a lifetime, but if you ask me, is it clear that God uses angels, and that it could be a specific angel, because of the text that you just said, to specifically care for individual believers, and this is just a kindness towards his children? Yeah, not only do I think that's makes sense. I think we actually see some form of that all over the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, what else can it mean to say they are angels? To have another example of this that comes to my mind, and people don't think of it as a guardian angel, but Lot, when he's in Sodom and Gomorrah, God sends 2 angels to specifically get him out. Yeah. And then, yes, they carry out judgment on the city, but what are they doing if not guarding him, protecting him, getting him out? So were those 2 angels, were they following Lot the rest of his life? I have no idea. But were they guardian angels of Lot in the sense of God said, hey, go do this and protect this man, and then they did it in obedience to Yahweh?
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, the question comes: is it children that have guardian angels? Is it all children? Is it the children of believers? Is it those who are in need? One caution I would say is that the reason the Scripture is not that clear on this, and it doesn't explicitly tell us, hey, you have an angel, remember to say thank you to him or something like that, is we are specifically told not to worship angels.
Right.
In Colossians, for example, and that's Colossians 2:18. The worship of angels is something that humans were being tempted to, and God says not to do that. You even see when John the apostle himself, in his revelation, the vision that he has of heaven, when he sees an angel, he bows down to worship the angel, and the angel has to rebuke him and say, "Don't do that. I'm just a servant." And that happens. That happens a couple of times in the book of Revelation. So here's a warning to us that these creatures that God has made, these angels, are so glorious and powerful and beautiful that it would be a temptation for us to worship them if we encountered one. And so don't do that. Don't pray to your angel. Don't talk to your angel. If you think you have one, you talk to God, you pray to God. But know that if there is some sort of spiritual warfare going on, I have nothing to fear, because even if needs be, God would dispatch angels to look after me. Jesus even says that in the Garden of Gethsemane, doesn't he? When Peter starts defending him with the sword, he says, "Don't you know that I could ask my Father for 12 legions of angels?"
Right.
And he would send them. So if God needs to look after you in the spiritual realm, he can, and he does.
And he does, right? I want to read a quote from John Calvin. Okay. I think this is helpful. He says, quote, "I do not know whether one ought to infer that each individual has the protection of his own angel. We ought to hold as a fact that the care of each of us is not the task of one angel only, but all with one consent watch over our salvation." So Calvin's basically saying, is there just one? I don't know, but I know there's a whole bunch of them under service to the Lord that are ministering to us.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see how many of the early church fathers and theologians over the ages just assumed guardian angels are there. I mean, Basil writes about it. Luther's writing about it as well. Clement writes about it, one of the early writers. Origen. They all have different ideas about it, but they all take it as a matter of course that there are angels that look after humans.
This is not a Bible question. This is full cards on the table, a Clint experience question. Uh-oh. Have you ever had an experience or seen something happen that you have thought, I think an angel was involved there?
No, not that I can. I mean, I'm sure one would be emblazoned in my mind if there was, but no, not necessarily. But there have been times in my life when I thought that is an unusual, lucky is the word someone said. There seemed to be something that was pushing things towards a providence that could be explained that way. But no, I haven't had any kind of encounter like that myself.
Do you remember, you told a story in a sermon a while ago about a missionary that was under threat?
Yeah, John
I think
Paton.
It was in the New Hebrides, right?
Yeah,
you want to tell that story really quickly?
Yeah, that's just a famous account John Paton wrote about in his experience in the New Hebrides. That's where the cannibals lived, and one of the early times that they were there, his family's little hut was surrounded by, or was being approached by armed natives on the island, and they just prayed for protection throughout the night, and those natives left them alone. Later on, when they were converted, one of them, he asked them and said, "So what happened that night that you were in that group? Why did you turn away?" And he said, "Oh, because we saw these men in shining clothing with swords surrounding your hut, and we were afraid of them, so we left." And I mean, there were no men. These must have been angels. Was John Paton's testimony.
Yeah, that's amazing. All right, any other thoughts on guardian angels?
No.
Okay, that does it for this episode of Cage Free Theology.